Welcome to WanaxTV Live. In this episode, we're talking about King Kušmešuša of Cyprus, or the Kingdom of Alasia, as it is known in the late Bronze Age. Before we begin, I'd like to thank to everybody joining us live in chat right now, as well as all of the channel subscribers, all of the YouTube members and Patreon members, of course. Shout out to Interdictor in the chat, the first comment, and Fletcher as well. So this episode is going to be very interesting. We're talking about late Bronze Age once again. King Kušmešuša, the only recorded king in the Bronze Age history of Cyprus. And before we begin, I'd like to give a couple of credits from the last episode. Shout out to Zadeo in the chat as well. Glad to see you here, sir. And Ritimna is here as well. So we have quite a few people from Greece joining us at the moment, which is good. Right now it's 6:15. How about right now? Is a volume a little bit better, Interdictor? Hopefully the volume, the sound is good. Just confirm that in the chat, and that we should be good to go. Either way, a few credits. Um, Give me 1 second. I want to display that on the screen as well. So now it's good. Okay, I just turned the volume up a little bit, so we should be good to go. Perfect. So I would like to give a shout out to Interdictor, the first comment in the chat, of course, and also to Hackathon, aka Jason, for the last episode super chat, and also a super thanks from Lino Benetti. Thank you very much. Oh, we have chat filling up pretty quick right now. Short notice episode. We know that the Cycladic civilization will be aired tomorrow. Today's Kušmešuša of Cyprus. I have already mentioned so many times what we are doing, what we're working on right now. Documentary wise, it's the Etruscan Civilization documentary, which I have been working every single day for the past 5 or 6 days. We're progressing towards the release, which is going to be, I would estimate, in less than a month. So stay tuned for that. Zadeo says 100% better. I had to level up the volume before, but now it's better. Perfect. We have Beats. Greetings from the land of Ahiawa. Greetings to you. We have Rob saying, this is the first time I managed to watch this live. Thank you for your great content. Your videos are always worth a watch, and I'm loving these live streams. Thank you very much, Rob. So many people already know the reason we started these live streams is because it was getting very difficult for me to produce the regular episode on consistent basis, yes, on consistently lately, due to the amount of work that I have with the Etruscan civilization video. It's a major documentary. It's going to be about 2 hours long, and we're going to go through everything. I did my best when it comes to the animations. When it comes to the voice, I hired a professional narrator, a guy. Shout out to Thomas Wicello. He's a narrator for the Etruscan episode. I will display his channel on the screen during the episode as well. So I've done everything I could to produce the best quality that I'm able to for the Etruscans. So it should be a great entertainment for sure, and a lot of things that you can't see anywhere else on YouTube. A lot of names, about dozens and dozens of names of Etruscan leaders, of Etruscan kings, of the records of what they did, the wars they engaged in. Many of them, most of them historical, some even mythological. Etruscan figures are mentioned, their relations with the Greeks, the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Romans, the Italic peoples, the Celts. We are going to go through Etruscan League, three of them actually. There's one in Etruria, one in the Po River Valley, which was overrun by the Celts, and one in the Campania region, close to, centered around the city of Capua. Many of you who are into Roman history certainly know about Capua. Luis Aldamis, shout out to Luis Aldamis in the chat as well. So with that being said, we and shout out to Khan Theo in the chat as well. A lot of new faces in the chat. I'm impressed. This is very short notice, and we already have quite a few people watching. Very good. And with that being said, the segments are very simple for this episode because Kušmešuša is the only recorded king of Alatia in the Bronze Age, being recorded by name in the contemporary sources. Those contemporary sources being the Ugaritic texts, and there's not there's there's not too much on him besides the text and the context of the era which he lived in, which he ruled. And we will also mention some of his governors who are also had relations with the neighboring polities. And with that being said, we have a background. We're going to have three segments. First one being background on the Kingdom of Alatia, overview of the kingdom, overview of the Cyprus in general in Bronze Age, and we will go through the reign, what we know of the reign of King Kušmešuša, Alatia, the state of the kingdom of Alatia under his rule, correspondence with Ugarit, obviously, and we'll slide into the third segment afterwards, the Bronze Age collapse. We'll go through two important events of the time. One is the Hittite intervention/invasion of Cyprus under Shuppiluliuma II, and another one is the invasion of the Sea Peoples and the final destruction of the Kingdom of Alatia and its replacement by the emerging Greek city-states. All right, Zadeo says, you are 100% at explaining history stuff and nonetheless at making videos. I'm glad that making live videos, it's easier for you. If I would have the talent at making videos with a similar quality, I would. So basically how I started is I used to watch, I always liked history, Greek history to be specific, but history in general also. I like Romans, I like mostly ancient history, that's my thing, but obviously, I'm sorry, medieval history and history in general. I like I like the science that is history, And I was watching a lot of history content, a lot of those early channels pre 2020. I watched Historia Civilis. If anybody's familiar with that channel, I liked that channel a lot. I watched uh, channels such as Epic History TV, and I also happened to watch History with Cy at the time. And I left him a comment one time of that his videos of some about something that I liked in the video, and he replied to me, and then basically over time he encouraged me to start my own thing after I sent him a sample of an intro that I created, some animation intro. It's 1 minute long. I could find it somewhere. And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's great, man. You should totally start your own thing." And that's how everything began. I did have previous knowledge when it comes to movie making, all the way from elementary school and high school, and I was kind of good in Photoshop as well. That comes with movie making, and that's basically how we began. What I learned in the meantime is to write a scenario. That's what I did for the first time when I started the channel, and obviously the narration. Those were the two things that I never tried before starting the channel. Rob says, really excited to watch the Etruscan video. Hello from the UK. Shout out to the UK. It's past 11 and I've just finished a 15-hour shift at work. This should help me unwind. Well, hopefully it helps. Uh, we have a lot of other comments as well, but let's dive in the topic. We have Cyprus in the Bronze Age, and the island of Cyprus had actually been inhabited since the Neolithic period, and I believe in the fourth millennium BC is where we have emergence of a new culture on the island, likely linked to either Anatolia or the general region of Anatolia slash Eastern Mediterranean slash Levant, likely, possibly. So from that point on, we see really emergence of more complex settlements on the island, communities which now resemble towns, towns which over time grow into cities and so on, very important and developed centers on the island at the time. And we have utilization of the most important resource, natural resource that is in existence on the island, which is copper. Copper, as we already know, is a metal alloy which can be which can be created in very sharp shapes. It's compact. It can be very hard and compact, and tools and weapons can be created out of copper. And what is even more important when it comes to the Bronze Age context, when you mix another element, which is tin, with copper, you get bronze. And bronze was really the thing when it comes to the Bronze Age. Armors, weapons, tools, everything was made of bronze. And Cyprus, having an abundance of copper, was a major center for for many of the contemporary kingdoms and civilizations and state when it comes to import of copper and generally source of that material. So as we go towards late Bronze Age, during Middle Bronze Age, late Bronze Age, we already have a development of an important polity on the island of Cyprus, the polity which is known as the Kingdom of Alasia. The Kingdom of Alasia, we do not know. We do know that Nkomi was likely the chief settlement on the island. We do know of a settlement called Alasa, and a few others. We do not know. There's no source that tells us specifically which city was the capital of the kingdom of Alasia. We assume it's in Komi because of its size and geographical position and so on. It had an important harbor. It had great size, especially in relative to other settlements on the island in the late Bronze Age. So, and Komi being one of, if not the most important city on the island and probably the capital of the kingdom. Now, the kingdom itself is called Alasia. Cyprus is still the name of the island in general, at least according to the Mycenaeans. Perhaps some other civilization calls the island differently. We do not know, but in the Linear B tablets, we do have Kupirio, which means Cyprus or Kypros or Kupros, as it is pronounced, roughly pronounced in Greek. Obviously, this is relative to copper. This island has always been heavily associated with copper when it comes to Bronze Age and the later periods when it comes to antiquity. So Kupirio means either Cyprus or a Cypriot, a person from Cyprus. Also the polity of the island, Kingdom of Alasia, we do have Linear B name for that, which is Alasio. As you can see here, it says Arasio, but we do know that R and L are indistinguishable, and the pronunciation depends on the context when it comes to the Linear B. So it is Alasio or Alassos, as it was known to the Mycenaean Greeks. We have Akkadian name, obviously used by the Hittites, Alasia or Alasia. You see Ugaritic version, you see ancient Egyptian version, and that's pretty much how the island and the kingdom itself were known throughout the ancient world. Important commercial power in the late Bronze Age. Obviously, we have mentioned this. They did develop into a very important commercial power to the level where some of the Alatian kings were referred to as equals, even by the pharaohs of Egypt at some point in time. Whether or not the Egyptians really viewed Cypriots as their equals, unlikely, but they had to play nice due to their economic importance and Cyprus being the source of copper, obviously. As you can see, trade and diplomacy based on copper exports, and this is a fact. Cyprus was the chief source of copper in the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Eastern Mediterranean is where the Bronze Age civilizations were located, from Hittite Empire in Anatolia, Levantine polities, Mesopotamian policies and polities and great kingdoms such as Babylonia, Assyria, Mitanni at one point in time, and obviously to the south, the new kingdom of Egypt. And of course, let's not forget Minoan civilization of Crete, especially during the Middle Bronze, and the Mycenaean Greece during the Late Bronze Age in the Aegean Sea. Luis Aldana says, I was watching some other video on alchemy at Let's Talk Religion and saw this, so I switched gear. Well, thank you very much. This means that we do provide at least some entertainment value over here, which is good. That's the goal, I guess. Zadeo says, hey, Luis, great to see you back. It's actually quite impressive. Luis Aldamis has been, I don't know if you missed any of the streams, any of the live episodes recently, and we have been doing them at different times. Right now it's about midnight in Europe, The other time we did closer to midnight Eastern time, so it was a 5 to 6 a.m. in Europe, so very impressive. Santiago, shout out to Santiago, he's in the chat as well. Edito says, man, only 24K subs. What a crime, dude. Should we be way up over 100K by now? Well, we will get there. I know that for a fact. We will get to 100K one way or the other because I suppose consistency is key, and with this new style, with live episodes in combination with the regular episodes, which will be aired regularly once the Etruscan video is out, I think that we should be doing well. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy that even with 20,000 subscribers, we have good audience each and every time when we're live on stream. So that's pretty impressive. I did not know that we have such a good uh, viewer base before I started doing these live episodes. So thank you very much to everybody for showing up every time. Luis Aldame says, I did miss some episodes anyhow. I'm just bad at sleeping at the right time. A real problem. Well, okay, it's sometimes it happens to everybody. Shout out to Jason in the chat. And I think that we have cleared pretty much everybody. Interdictor has an idea to substitute tin, okay, but it's rather toxic. Speaking of arsenic. Okay, so quick background that we have done on Cyprus in Bronze Age. So there's a distinction between Cyprus being the island and Alasia being the chief kingdom on the island. Whether or not Alasia was organized as a unitary state, like a unitary kingdom, if the king of Alasia controlled directly all of the island of Cyprus, or we had similar situation as we do in Minoan civilization when there are several palace centers and Knossos is the chief among them, or Mycenaean Greece, we do not know, but for all purposes here, the king of Alasia is the most powerful ruler on Cyprus and likely rules all of the island. With that being said, we are slowly sliding through towards the reign of Kušmešuša, but before that, we do know that even as early as the end of the 15th century BC, close to 1400 BC, we have the first encounters of Mycenaeans and uh, the Cypriots, or how the later Greeks called them, Etiocypriots. So Etiocypriot means real or native or original Cypriot, very similar to Etiocretans, the successors of the Minoans, who became known by that name after the Mycenaean conquest of the Minoan civilization. To themselves, they were just known as Cretans, so similar situation that we had on Cyprus after the Bronze Age collapse. Either way, we're talking about the ancestors of the Etiocypriots. We're just going to call them Cypriots in this video, and they are the ones who inhabit the kingdom of Alasia. By 1400 BC, we had Mycenaean establishment of Miletus as the mainland stronghold of the Mycenaean Greeks in Asia Minor. Following their conquest of Crete, we had Atarsia of Achaea being the main leader of the Mycenaeans in Asia Minor and Eastern Mediterranean as well. He was hostile to the Hittites. He had battles with the Hittites. Eventually, him and his allies had a Hittite royal army destroyed in the lands of Lucca, which gave Atarsia free hand to roam through western Anatolia and also eastern Mediterranean, which he utilized. And we had several Mycenaean raids on the island of Cyprus in the early 14th century BC. All of this is recorded in the Hittite text known as Indictment of Maduwata. We also had more mentions of the kingdom of Alasia. We have Amarna letters, letters of correspondence between Egyptian pharaoh and the king of Alasia throughout, I believe, several decades in the 14th century BC. And we had instances where the pharaoh of Egypt is very favorably looking towards Alasia and calls the king of Alasia, quote unquote, my brother, which signifies a symbol of an equal in the late Bronze Age world. And this was likely caused by the fact that Cyprus was a commercial superpower, not a military one, but a commercial power in the Eastern Mediterranean, very important to the Egyptians, but also to all of the other great kingdoms of the time, such as the Hittites, such as the Mitanni, the great kingdoms of Mesopotamia, and so on. So Pharaoh of Egypt was in a situation where at times he had to play nice with the Cypriots, and that's likely why we have term my brother sent towards Cyprus. But the Egyptians also called the kings of Arzava as my brother at some point in time, roughly around the same or similar time in the throughout the 14th century BC. And this is before Shuppiluliuma I emerged and kind of beaten back Arzavan advances in Anatolia. But nevertheless, Alasia kept its great importance throughout the 14th century BC and into the 13th century as well. Throughout all this time, we have many mentions of King of Alasia being an important figure consistently throughout the Eastern Mediterranean world, and this was mentioned by not only Pharaoh of Egypt but other contemporary rulers throughout this time. But unfortunately, nobody had recorded the actual name of any of the Alasian kings until the late 13th century BC, and this is where we have the first and only recorded Bronze Age king on Cyprus. We're talking about King Kušmešuša of Alasia, the king ruling in the late 13th century BC. Jason says, I'm often here but have nothing to say, so you know I'm here, but I'm hitting the thumbs up at the moment, the live stream, so starts, so I'm here. Well, thank you very much. You're always welcome to say hi in the chat or give your thoughts about anything that we're talking at the moment or anything else related to either the topic or the channel, so you're more than welcome, Jason. Shout out to Real Uvain. He says, Ethio-ethnic. Glen Lake says Greek brothers. We have Ziri1. Good evening from Greece. Good evening to you. I'm glad that we have quite a few people from Greece online at the moment. That's great. That means that we should be doing these streams at more convenient time when it comes to the viewers from Europe. Perhaps 4 p.m. would be good Eastern time. That amounts to about 10 p.m. in Central Europe and 11 p.m. in Greece, if I am correct. We have a key cup, Greek Cypriot listening. Well, shout out to Cyprus. I believe that Cyprus is even later time zone than Greece is. So of course, shout out to Cyprus. We're talking about Cyprus today, so great to see somebody from Cyprus on. Shout out to you. Fletcher says, equals or in-laws by marriage. Uh, it would not be in-laws by marriage, because if that was the situation and one king was superior to another, one king was a great king, for example, Pharaoh, and another king was his vassal, he would still call him my son, even if he's younger than him, it wouldn't matter. He would still call him my son in official correspondence. So for the Egyptian Pharaoh to send a letter to the king of Cyprus and says, my brother, you need to send me this, or what about the cup, or whatever economic or commercial stuff they were talking about, he's saying my brother. That means that he considers his fellow king important or on the equal level as he is. And when it comes to the Hittites, for example, they only recognize a handful of kings as their equals: a king of Egypt, a king of Babylon, a king of Mitanni kingdom, which was later switched with the Assyrian king, and the king of Ahiyawa for a time throughout the 13th and 14th century BC, very likely. So they did not consider many of the contemporary rulers as their equals. When it comes to the Egyptians, we do know of the Babylonians. They did consider them as equals. They did consider the Hittites as their equals. And they did consider kings of Mitanni. We do know that the Mitanni kingdom was eventually subdued and basically split between the Hittites and the Assyrians. And after the fall of the Mitanni kingdom, we have emergence of Assyria as a great power in the Near East, and thus Egyptians likely considered the Assyrian kings as their equals. We do not know anything about their consideration for the Mycenaean kings, because Mycenae was very far away at the edge of the known world when it comes to the Egyptians, so they didn't really even care about the Mycenaeans, especially not on the level that the Hittites did. The Hittites had direct relations with the Mycenaeans, and many proxy struggles and diplomatic relations throughout all of the late Bronze Age. Luis Aldama's brother also implies friendly relations. That is correct. It also implies either friendly or neutral relations or some kind of courtesy. Obviously, if they're in the middle of war against somebody, they would not send him a letter and say, hey, my brother, how about we make peace, unless they're losing, right? So brother also, let's see, Luis Adami says, that's why the Hittites slashed that out when the Greeks were hostile, most likely. You're probably referring to the correspondence of Tudhalia IV to a vassal king in the Levant, in the land of Amuru, I think, where they said that their equals were kings of Egypt, Babylonia, Assyria, and Ahiava, and then they crossed Ahiava in the end. We do not know why exactly that happened. We do know that they had hostile relations with the Assyrians at the time, and they still consider them equals. Perhaps that correlates to the Mycenaean loss of Miletus and Achaean possessions in coastal Asia Minor, so they became less relevant to the Hittites. Perhaps that was the reason, and but they still mentioned, I believe, that their vassals should block the Mycenaean ships from reaching Assyrians or so on. So it's hard to say why exactly, but that was a time of the start of the Mycenaean decline, but also Hittite decline. So who knows? Kika says, as far as I know, Trojan War was Hellenic tribal war, Achaeans against Dorians in the book of Judges and Samuel and Joshua. Real Uvain says, I think it is logical. Some Greco-Phoenicians was there before Hittite related. Luis Aldames, if I recall correctly, I'm sure that Labarna did that personally in anger when reviewing the letter. Labarna, you're probably referring to Tudhalia IV, right? Since Labarna was kind of a title by that time. Could be. You might be right. You might be right. I'm not sure. All right. Back to the late 13th century BC, we have the reign of King Kušmešuša. He is best known, and he's only known from one tablet that we are aware of, and that is the Ugaritic tablet from the House of Urtenu. House of Urtenu was a residence of one of the most important individuals in Ugarit at the time. We're talking about Urtenu himself. He was a high official in the city. He was, I believe, very important to trade when it comes to Ugarit, and he was one of the most important individuals in the city. And in his residence, we have a kind of a library or a kind of a collection of tablets, collection of official correspondence, and so on. Either way, in the ruins of his residence, we find the tablet sent from King Kušmešuša of Alasia to his contemporary king Nikmadu III of Ugarit, and he clearly views Ugarit as inferior to Alasia. So, and we do know this from other correspondence as well, that the kings of Ugarit referred to the kings of Alasia as quote unquote my father, and the reference in the reverse direction was my son, from coming from the kings on Cyprus towards the kings of Ugarit. That being so, because Ugarit was a vassal kingdom to the Hittite Empire, and Alasia was independent for the most part. We did have Hittite advances, attempts to create vassals out of Alasia. We had Hittite claims dating all the way to the 1400 BC. Whether or not Alasia was really a vassal, in a vassal state, they were under vassalage towards the Hittites. It is unknown, perhaps maybe nominally at times, but practically unlikely, especially if we are talking about the 14th century BC, where even the Egyptian pharaohs referred to the Alasians as their brothers. So when it comes to Kušmešuša himself, it's unlikely that he was vassal to anybody. We're clearly, judging by this letter, we're talking about rather powerful, at least commercially powerful, independent ruler. And he sends this letter to King Nikmadu of Ugarit. He says, "Thus says Kušmešuša, king of Alasia, say to Nikmadu, king of Ugarit, my son, all is well with me, my households, my countries, my wives, my sons, my troops, my horses, and my chariots. In exchange for the gift which you had sent me, I send you 33 ingots of copper. Their weight is 30 talents and 6,500 shekels." So we can clearly see that Ugarit being in some kind of subservient position towards Alasia, at least when it comes to official correspondence. In reality, they were vassals of the Hittites, not of the Alasians. It was probably just a matter of respect towards the more powerful kings at the time. They had sent certain gifts to Cyprus, and as a result of that, in exchange for that, the king Kušmešuša sends 33 ingots of copper to Ugarit, and he specifies their weight as 30 talents and 6,500 shekels. So this is the only correspondence where a king of Alasia is mentioned by name in all of Bronze Age. So Kušmešuša is the only king that we know by name when it comes to Bronze Age Cyprus. Excuse me. It is unknown when exactly his reign began. It is unknown when exactly his reign ended. But we do know that he had his high officials on the court. And we do know names for the two of them, being Sinama and Sangiwa. How do we know that? Because House of Ortenu also had many other tablets, and among those other tablets, these two officials, who are titled, I believe, governors or high governors on Cyprus, whatever that means, because we are not sure a title of governor, whether that means some kind of a minister or some kind of a ruler of a particular city on Cyprus, or what does quote unquote governor mean. But we do know that both of them were high officials under Kušmešuša, and they also corresponded with King Nikmadu of Ugarit. So as we go towards the very end of the 13th century, we do have increased instability in the region. In Eastern Mediterranean, we do have emergence of the Sea Peoples. And once again, we do not know whether or not Kušmešuša is still the king of Alasia at this point, or he has been succeeded by somebody else at this time. But we are slowly moving on the two final events which took place either very late in Kušmešuša's reign or after his reign. We do not know that, because we do not know until when he ruled exactly. And when it comes to that, we have Bronze Age collapse, and as a part of that, we have two key events which we're going to talk about in this closing segment. One is the Hittite intervention on Cyprus, which happened during the reign of King Shupililiuma II, the final king of the Hittite Empire. And another event is the invasion of the Sea Peoples. They did not solely invade Cyprus. They invaded many of the great kingdoms and other polities in Eastern Mediterranean, such as the Hittites, such as Ugarit, such as the land of Amuru, and finally, last but not least, the kingdom of Egypt itself. Luis Aldame says the Labarna means Hittite king. I can't recall all the names without double checking. So in this context, yes, Labarna is kind of like a title based. I'm sorry. I'm kind of losing my voice at the moment for whatever reason. So sorry about that. But regarding Labarna, it was an actual name from an early Hittite king from the Old Kingdom. And by the later periods, it became more like a title, and it was used by several late Hittite kings, one of them being Tudhalia IV. And Tudhalia IV used to refer to himself as Labarna, as a hero, as a great king, and so on. All right, so during the reign of Suppiluliuma II, the Hittites invade Cyprus. They want to make Cyprus their vassals. And this is likely earlier in Suppiluliuma's reign. I'm sorry, I will take a tiny break just to clear my voice. So hang tight. I will take 20 seconds break so I can properly talk because this is getting I'll be right back in 1 second. All right, so we're back. We should be better by now. I got my water so that we can close this segment properly. Shuppiluliuma wants to subdue Cyprus and he invades the island with his forces, likely in the earlier part of his reign. He defeats Alasia first on a naval battle on sea, and then he embarks on land. He defeats the Alasian defending force, and Alasia finally accepts its vassalage to the Hittites. Now, whether or not they continued to serve as Hittite vassals once Suppiluliuma left the island is another question. They probably did for a time, but this is also a time of Hittite decline. So it's very possible that as soon as the Hittite army left, Alasia was left to itself and acted de facto independently. We do not know this, so this is a speculation at this point, but we do know that they did accept vassal status to Shupiluluma II when he invaded and defeated Cypriot force. When it comes to Kušmešuša, we do not know whether or not he was the king of Alasia at this point. And several decades, or let's say a decade or two afterwards, we have we have invasions of the sea peoples who had already emerged by this time. Shupiluluma goes back to his kingdom. He has a war with a coalition from Western Anatolia at the time. A lot of problems. Hittite empire is on the decline, severe decline, and big reason, or one of the reasons for that, is military pressure coming from the West and coming by sea, and that's a coalition of the sea peoples. We have already had an episode of the identity of the sea peoples. We numbered all of the groups: the Peleset, the Denyen, Shekelesh, Sherden, Washish, and others who are important to this context of invasions of roughly 185 to 1185 to 1175 BC. And at this point, we have battles, naval battles in the lands of Luca. We have sea people invasion into Anatolia. And we have a letter of correspondence from King of Ugarit, the final king of Ugarit, Amurapi, to the king of Alasia. And we do not know who the king of Alasia is at this point. This is early 12th century BC. Where the Ugarit ruler asks for help, and he still refers to the Alasian king as my father. So that signifies that the king of Alasia is still important and still powerful and still considered to be superior to the king of Ugarit. He asks for help. He says that all of his ships are in the land of Luca, all of his soldiers and chariots are in the land of Hatti, defending Hattusa. So there's severe battles going on right now. It is unlikely that Alasian force ever arrived to help the Ugarites, because Ugarit was shortly destroyed shortly afterwards. We did have pleas for help from Ugarit to nearby Karkemish. But nevertheless, it did not help. Ugarit was destroyed by the sea peoples. And shortly following the destruction of Ugarit, we have destruction of Hattusa itself. And almost simultaneously, we have destruction of the kingdom of Alasia. Now, which specific sea peoples group destroyed the kingdom of Alasia, which happened around 1180 BC? We do not have any records on that. We do not have any records of the battles that took place. We do have a record of one senior official of Alasia named Eshuwara, who responded to the Ugaritic king, and he says something in the context of it's your peoples who did this, it's your ships who are taking part of this. I'm telling this just to protect you, be aware. So he's not sending help, he's just saying that Ugarit's own people and Ugarit's own ships are taking part in the sea people's attacks, which is very interesting. That means that many many peoples, many soldiers from all civilizations really joined the Sea Peoples when they saw the destruction they were causing, and likely they wanted to join the raids and the pillaging and so on. And nevertheless, Ogrit was destroyed and at around 1185 BC, if I'm correct, and shortly afterwards, Alasia itself is destroyed, as well as Hattusa, which marks the end of the Hittite Empire, which also marks the end of the kingdom of Alasia. Luis Aldami says, I'd give you a marshmallow candy, local specialty, great for throat, but not physically possible. All right, thank you very much. I did not expect this to happen, but I tried my best to get through, and I'm very lucky that this is not a long episode. We're talking about Kušmešuša king, who is only known from one single reference by name. So, so I made it. So after Alasia is destroyed, and we're talking about the first half of the 12th century BC, we have almost immediately we have emergence of sub-Mycenaean culture, Greek culture on the island of Cyprus, and we have emergence of the city kingdoms of Cyprus, which would be very prominent in the archaic and classical and even Hellenistic periods. Which means that whatever Sea Peoples group was responsible for the destruction of the kingdom of Alasia, that group was a Hellenic group. So those were the Greeks who were really responsible for the end of the kingdom of Alasia, replacing it with many, or should I say, a dozen of Greek city-states, which were really kingdoms, tiny kingdoms on the island of Cyprus. Chief among them being Salamis, Paphos, Kition, Kurion, Marion, and several others. All right, with that being said, we are slowly concluding this Saturday episode. Not an overly long episode, about 1 hour long. Not bad. Tomorrow's Cycladic civilization will be likely about 2 hours. We have a lot of segments for that prepared. I have already prepared both today's and Sunday's episode, so Cyclades will be very interesting. We have quite a discussion in the chat. But with that being said, I'm not going to keep you here for too long. I also have to fix my throat to fix my voice somehow to be ready for tomorrow and not have my voice disappearing in the middle of the episode on Sunday. That would be terrible. So I will not hold you here for any longer. I would like to thank to everybody for showing up, especially people from Europe, especially people from Greece and Cyprus. I mean, it's I really want to accommodate you guys better than I'm doing right now. So I will try to have Sunday episode on a little bit earlier. We'll try to do it at between 3 and 4 p.m. my time, which is Eastern time. So late evening slash night time for Greece. Perhaps I'll try to get it at some point between 9 and 10 p.m. Greek time. So I'll try to do that tomorrow. No guarantees, but we'll see what happens. All right. Well, thank you everybody once again, and see you tomorrow. Do not miss the Cyclades civilization on Sunday. With that being said, have a great night. Thank you very much.